A chance for healing 170 years after a Lakota massacre. Dozens of personal belongings from the Rosebud Sioux tribe find their way home after spending decades in the Smithsonian collections. Ari Daniel, host, There's More to That. October 9, 2025. Get our newsletter. Smith Mag Podcast S04 EP14 Lakota article.jpg. Illustration by Emily Lankiewicz / photos by Gary Witten / Nawaphon via Adobe Stock and public domain. This fall, 69 belongings made their way home to the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota from the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. These items, which included buffalo robes, blankets, moccasins and a doll, had been taken from the Lakota community after the Blue Water Massacre in 1855. The first major ambush on a Native American community by the U.S. Army. It would become the start of a decades-long campaign against the Plains tribes that would end with the death and displacement of numerous Native Americans. The return of the belongings offers a modicum of closure, but the pain of the massacre lives on among those on the reservation today. In this episode of Smithsonian Magazine's podcast There's More to That, host Ari Daniel speaks with Ione Quigley and Karen Little Thunder, two members of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and Smithsonian contributing writer Tim Madigan about the journey of these belongings from their birthplace to a museum and back. A transcript is below. To subscribe to There's More to That, and to listen to past episodes about the search for the remains of fallen airmen from World War II, a baseball field resurrected in a Japanese internment camp and a deeper look at lesser-known stories of the American Revolution, find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Ari Daniel, hey, it's Ari. I recently had a rather memorable conversation with two women. Ione Quigley, my name is Ione Quigley. I'm the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Rosebud Sioux tribe. Karen Little Thunder, my name is Karen K. Little Thunder. I am a member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe. Daniel, Karen and Ione live on the Rosebud Reservation in south-central South Dakota. Little Thunder, rolling plains, a little bit of hills. There's a river running through the reservation. Pine trees, lots of cottonwood trees. It's beautiful country. Quigley, we are a population of maybe about 35,000 in our tribe. Some of them live off of the reservation. We have relatives amongst each other so that we're forever connected with somebody. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody relates to all of the challenges that we all face as a tribe. But all in all, it's home. Everybody that leaves from here sometime in their life. Daniel, Ione and Karen spoke about the beauty of this special place where they grew up and live today, of stepping outside in the early hours to say prayers under a morning star, of clean water and buffalo herds, and a connection to the earth. But they also spoke of difficulties, of overwhelming challenges, both modern and inherited, and to disconnect from their own culture. Here's Karen. Little Thunder, I now have my bachelor's degree in business management from St. Gluska University. And the Lakota Studies Department, that is where I learned most of what I do know about my own culture. Daniel, it was at this local university that Karen experienced an abrupt and painful awakening. A student came to her and urged Karen to talk to a professor on campus who was teaching his students about something called the Blue Water Massacre. Little Thunder, so I did. We caught up with each other in the hallway of the Lakota Studies Department building, and he shared with me a quick 10-15 minutes of the massacre, what he was teaching. Daniel, the 1855 Blue Water Massacre took place about a 4-hour drive south of where Karen stood at that moment. It's considered the first major attack in what would become a 35-year campaign of assaults perpetrated by the U.S. Army upon the Lakota people, a campaign that culminated in the attack at Wounded Knee. By the end of the Blue Water Massacre, 86 Lakota would be dead, and 70 would be rounded up and held by the U.S. military at Fort Laramie. It was an event that forever changed the history of the Lakota, the tribes of the Northern Plains and Karen Little Thunder's family. Little Thunder, yes. My great-great-grandfather Little Thunder, Wakinyan Sakala, was among the leaders of the camp at the time of the massacre. I call him Little Thunder the Elder, and then my great-grandfather I call Little Thunder the Younger. He was a young boy around 10, 12 years old at the time of the massacre, and he was protected and hidden by his grandmother. And he was able to survive. Daniel, Karen knows about the massacre now, but as she stood in the hallway that day, she learned about much of it for basically the first time. Little Thunder, it was horrible. It was horrifying. And I couldn't express, I couldn't share, I couldn't even ask anybody. So this turned my world upside down entirely. I have come to believe that I was one of the people there who was killed. I do believe in reincarnation. I do believe in the ways of our people, and I do have memories of that day. Daniel, wow. You believe that you experienced it, died on that day, and came back? Little Thunder, exactly. Daniel, at the very moment that Karen was standing in that hallway, some 1,500 miles east in Washington, D.C., there were belongings that had borne witness to that massacre, items that had been sitting in a Smithsonian Institution storage facility for generations. And early this fall, Karen and Ione got them back. Daniel, Karen knows about the massacre now, but as she stood in the hallway that day, she learned about much of it for basically the first time. Little Thunder, it was horrible. It was horrifying. And I couldn't express, I couldn't share, I couldn't even ask anybody. So this turned my world upside down entirely. I have come to believe that I was one of the people there who was killed. I do believe in reincarnation. I do believe in the ways of our people, and I do have memories of that day. Daniel, wow. You believe that you experienced it, died on that day, and came back? Little Thunder, exactly. Daniel, at the very moment that Karen was standing in that hallway, some 1,500 miles east in Washington, D.C., there were belongings that had borne witness to that massacre, items that had been sitting in a Smithsonian Institution storage facility for generations. And early this fall, Karen and Ione got them back. From Smithsonian Magazine and PRX Productions, this is There's More to That, the show where history doesn't live in the past. In this episode, the journey of the Blue Water collection from its home to a museum and back again, and how it's brought the possibility of healing to the Lakota community. Stay tuned. Little Thunder, the massacre happened on September 3, 1855. It was an attack of retaliation and revenge. Daniel, the story of the Blue Water Massacre begins a year prior to the actual day of the attack, when a cow being led by a group of Mormon settlers got separated from its party. Little Thunder, and our people found that cow and made meals of it, fed the people. Daniel, this is Karen again. Little Thunder, our leadership made restitution for that cow, tried to.